Good afternoon. I will call the meeting to order for the Cobb County School Board for Thursday, January the 17th. This is our work session. We have 5 members here. Mr. Morgan and Mr. Banks should be here sometime during the afternoon. They're running a little late. And now, as we always do, would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Mr. Doyle, do we have any people for public comment?
We do not.
We do not. Okay, that brings us to the approval of the minutes from the December 13th, 2018 board meeting and the January 8th, 2019 called meeting. If there are no objections to approve, okay, they are approved. Let's turn now to board business and let's go to annual compliance. Please review and sign our annual statement, which I think we have placed with the members, and notice and sign the ethics form and the conflict of interest policies. It's in the notebook at your desk. Now, board member appointments to the Facilities and Technology Citizens Oversight Committee. I sent you an email earlier this week. If you would, by the business session or the work session for February, please review the appointees for your posts that are represented on the Facilities and Technology Committee and let us know who your representatives will be for the coming year. And the next thing is I have asked, and Mr. Scammahorn has agreed to continue as our board liaison with the Facilities and Technology Citizens Oversight Committee. Mr. Scammahorn, you still willing to do that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Okay, now we are ready for the superintendent's report.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm going to ask Mr. Brad Johnson, our CFO, to come forward and introduce the auditor that we have with us today, and hopefully, tongue-in-cheek, which I know it is, will bring us good news.
Good afternoon, board. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board, and Mr. Superintendent. Each year, the district undergoes a comprehensive independent financial audit, and it presents the financial status of the school district. The Cobb County School District has a deep history of financial accountability to the taxpayers in Cobb County. For the past 30 years and more, the district's accounting department has professionally performed the duties to account for all district financial transactions and fairly report the district's financial statements. For decades, the accounting department has consistently been recognized by government finance organizations for creating the best accounting practices and for their excellence in financial reporting from the top government accounting agencies in the United States. Additionally, in 2015, the district secured for the first time in history both top credit ratings in the country. So we have a AAA long-term credit rating and an MIG 1 short-term credit rating, both from Moody's Investor Services. So we're very proud of that. So you have an understanding of the scope of our financial operation and what is being audited. Here's some following metrics. A $1.1 billion general fund budget, $136 million in other funds and grants. We're the largest employer in Cobb County. 250,000 direct deposits and payroll checks are produced annually for approximately 19,000 full and part-time employees. Over 13 million meals served annually at 108 lunchrooms. Over 25,000 accounts payable checks to vendors annually. Hundreds of thousands of accounting transactions each year. The list goes on. And I think that given that scope, you can maybe appreciate the auditor when he makes his comments of the tasks that face the accounting department. I would like to thank our accounting director, Jan Hendricks, and her entire staff for the work they perform and they complete each year. Actually, Ms. Hendricks has one of the most challenging positions in the district, and a high-performing accounting operation is critical to school district operations. The function operates primarily behind the scenes, but as a part of the superintendent's district's team, I am proud of them and I appreciate the work they do to support our teachers and our district. The district's books were audited again this past year for the first time for the time period of July 1, 2017 through June 30th, 2018. Mr. Adam Fraley is a partner with the accounting firm of Leland Jenkins, is here present today at the board work session to present their independent audit, their professional opinion regarding the status of finances in the district, and their general comments. We appreciate their professionalism and how they worked with our staff to get the audit done. For today's meeting, we have provided each board member a comprehensive annual financial report, we call it the CAFR, as well as an audit report for your reference. These documents provide the results of the work performed by our accounting function, and this work has now been reviewed by the independent auditors, and we are ready to hear their comments. I am hoping to hear good things, and with the board chairman's and the superintendent's permission, I would like to invite Mr. Fraley to the podium.
Good afternoon. I am Adam Fraley. I was the partner in charge of the annual independent audit of the school district. And I understand through Mr. Johnson, speaking just there, that you have a copy of the CAFR, as well as, to throw another acronym at you, our Auditor's Discussion and Analysis, which I'll refer to as an AD&A quite a bit. So the AD&A is a summary of the audit results, our required communications, the findings related to the audit, and in the form of recommendations, as well as just a little summary of the actual financial results and some of the numbers behind these financial statements for the year ended June 30, 2018. So I'm going to pretty much stick to this if you want to follow along there. So starting on page 2 of the AD&A, our firm has a niche practice within it for which we serve local governments, state and local governments, and it is our largest niche practice within our firm. We've got a long history of doing so. We serve about 85,000 hours per year to local governments, to over 400 governments in the Southeast, most of those being in Georgia. Again, I was the engagement team lead partner. We also had an engagement manager named Christopher McKellar, as well as Joel Black, who was the quality assurance partner, which gives an independent eye and review of the reports in the audit file. Excuse me. Turning to the next page 3, a little more about Malden & Jenkins. This is some of the other industries we serve, as well as some of the other services that we provide. Just a little bit more about Malden & Jenkins there. And then on page 4, it talks about the responsibilities of both the school district and us as the independent auditors. The CAFR is the district's responsibility to annually put together a comprehensive annual, or to put together a financial report in accordance with state law and in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and submit that report to the state within 6 months of its year end. Over and above that, the district also prepares a comprehensive annual financial report, which is a lot more information, gives a lot of good statistical information going back 10 years. That information is located in the back of the CAFR on the final pages in that document. It also includes an introductory section as well as a management's discussion and analysis that I would encourage everyone, as you look through the CAFR, look at that management's discussion analysis. Oftentimes we call the MD&A, which kind of tells us the scenario kind of behind the numbers of what went on throughout the year about the finances. But again, the CAFR is management's responsibility. Our responsibility is to render an opinion on those financial statements based on our audit and test work. We did render an opinion. We oftentimes call it a clean opinion, but it is an unmodified audit report. What that means is that based on our test work, we believe that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects for the year ended June 30, 2018. The other item that I would like to note is that in this year's CAFR, there was an emphasis of matter paragraph in our audit opinion, and all that does is it directs readers to a major change in those financial statements. And this year, the change, which was caused by the implementation of a new accounting standard related to other post-employment benefits, like health insurance and so forth for retirees. That was required to be implemented this year, and so I'll talk a little bit about the financial impact of that in a minute. Next, page 5, again, that goes a little bit into what is made up in a CAFR, as well as on page 6, it talks about the GFOA and ASBO certificates for excellence in financial reporting that this district has a long history of receiving those certificates. On page 7, this is a little bit of financial information related to the school district as a whole. The district ended its year with total assets of about $2.1 billion, offset by also about $2.15 billion in liabilities. The result of that was a deficit net position of about $19 million. It is important to note that in those liabilities are these liabilities related to both pension and the OPEB, the other post-employment benefits related to health insurance, so forth. Those two items, the pension is about $712 million liability, as well as the OPEB liability of about $1 billion. These, as you know, school districts fund these as on a pay-as-you-go basis, and the school district is making the required contributions as determined by the actuaries on an annual basis. GASB has now said that those liabilities, even though they're far out in the future, are required to be reflected in the liabilities section on the government-wide financial statements nowadays. So, so that had to be pulled in this year, and so that has an impact on net position. The resulting net position composed of a large part invested in capital assets, as with any school district. Those capital assets and the net position related to that was about $1.4 billion. Another $163 million in restricted net position, and then about $1.6 billion in unrestricted deficit for government-wide. Now turning to the next page, I'm going to talk a little bit about the general fund, which is the main operating fund of the school district. The general fund does not contain these long-term liabilities like the OPEB and pension liabilities, so you get more of a near-term perspective. The general fund revenues were about $1 billion for the year, and you can see on page 8 there a pie graph of the makeup of those revenues compared to just under $1 billion of revenues in the prior year. And then on page 9, you can see total expenditures were a little over $1 billion as well. And then of that, about $725 million was related to instruction. You can see a graph above there of the other expenditures and the bar charts based on expenditures other than instructional expenditures. Going to page 10, you can see a 5-year history of the revenues of the general fund for both taxes and intergovernmental revenues, as well as a 5-year history of general fund's fund balance, which is the resulting reserves and equity of the general fund, and you can see the makeup of those over the 5 years. In the end, at June 30, 2018, the general fund's fund balance was about $140 million, which is an increase from the prior year of about $27 million. So we've added to that reserve in the main operating fund of the general fund. The fund balance being at year end about $140 million, and unassigned fund balance is about $109 million of that number. And then obviously the school district has about $1 billion in expenditures on an annual basis. You can see where that's a little over a month, worth of expenditures. One thing that we like to see is a 2 to 3 month kind of cushion. Typically June 30th year ends. They are running a little lean at June 30th because property taxes and so forth are to come in that next fall, and but still kind of in the 2 to 3 month range on annual expenditures. So that's typically what we see there. Going to the next couple pages, these are kind of a Cliff Notes version of the footnotes to the financial statements. So as you're looking at the CAFR, you can refer to here and see what each of those footnotes are referring to. The one that I'll point out is on page 12, and on page 12 there, you'll see notes 15 and 16. Those are new this year. The footnote 15 relates to that OPEB liability and the new reporting required there, as well as note 16 relates to the prior year restatement related to the implementation of that new standard. Okay. The next few pages on page 14 and going through to page 16, these are our required communications. I'm not going to go in detail on all of these, but I'd like to point out a couple items. We did have a couple audit adjustments that were presented to us as part of our process and presented to us by management of the school district. So they're identified by school district financial services personnel and presented to us, again, to ensure that these financial statements are fairly presented. Through our audit, we didn't have any difficulties with management or disagreements in any accounting principles or anything like that with management. In fact, the finance department, as well as the other departments that we had to encounter through the audit process, were extremely helpful and getting us everything we needed in a timely fashion, and we feel like the audit went really smooth. So I certainly want to mention that and thank the district's financial services department and others we dealt with for being so helpful. Then turning a couple pages on page 17 and page 18. Page 17 is oftentimes where we report on any findings. We did not have any findings that the auditing standards require us to report. So that's a real good thing. These days with the auditing standards and what we as auditors are required to report as findings as a product of the audit, the bar is pretty low, and we didn't have to cite any findings. So that's just a testament to how good the finance department and how hard they're working to ensure that that accurate financial results are presented to the board and to public. We did have a few here management recommendations, and really all of these 1 through 3 are items that I know that are in process. The school district is implementing and working through implementing a new accounting software related to Munis and so forth. So these items will likely fall off going forward, and things that we just noticed as part of kind of a byproduct of the audit where controls or procedures could be a little bit better. On the next page, on page 18, number 4, it relates to the limited number of employees at any particular school within the district, which is inherent to just about all school districts in Georgia, and the limited number of people you have there to separate duties related to the accounting functions at the schools. Along with these comments, you can see management's responses below each one of those. The remaining portion of my presentation in the document here relates to new accounting standards that are coming out. And again, I'm not going to go into details on all of those, but you'll see the first one is the new OPEB standards, so you can read a little bit about the kind of the behind the scenes information, if you will, related to the implementation of that new standard. There is a new lease standard coming out in future years that will need to be implemented by the school district. That's another, I guess, big one, if you will, just in the change of the way things are accounted for. All of these we have discussed with management, and we really just try to keep management kind of ahead of the curve on how, as these things are coming down the pipeline. And that's the conclusion of my presentation, but if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fraley. Appreciate what you and your team have done. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Mr. Fraley concerning the audit? Okay. We appreciate all the work you do for us, and thank you for the constructive comments also.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, if I can say one thing, I just remind people that the CAFR and I believe the audit will be on our website where the public can download them and view them for their reading pleasure. Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, members of the board, agenda item number 1 is the monthly recurring item for recommendation for authorization of school properties disposal per district administrative rule DO-R. That list has been sent to you electronically. Be happy to answer any questions if you have those at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Superintendent. I think if there's no objection, we'll put that on consent agenda.
All right. All right, I'm going to ask for agenda item number 2, Mr. Brad Johnson to come forward and bring this presentation.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board, Mr. Superintendent. Board Agenda Item Number 2 is a recommendation for approval of a resolution ratifying and confirming the acceptance of the best bid for the purchase of $90 million of short-term construction notes and documents associated with the notes. As a result of the many district building projects and to mitigate rising construction costs in Metro Atlanta are estimated to be in the 4 to 5% range, it's proposed that the district implement annual short-term construction notes for this fiscal year so that the district will have all of its SPLOST revenue at the beginning of each year instead of simply collecting the SPLOST revenue 1 month at a time during the year. We started the construction notes last year, and this is somewhat of a beginning of a standard operating procedures to do this. The district has done this many times over the past history. With that said, let me talk about the short-term construction notes and the various details that the board needs to be aware of. Number one, what is a short-term construction note? Well, as a form of a tax anticipation note, or a TAN, used for general fund purposes and property taxes, a short-term construction note is a short-term debt for a calendar year that must be paid back in the calendar year in which it was borrowed. These short-term notes would be repaid by the end of the calendar year using SPLOST revenue proceeds that will be collected each month during the calendar year. Short-term notes are not considered long-term debt. Short-term debt is debt less than 1 year. Long-term debt is debt greater than 1 year. Short-term borrowings are nothing new to the district, and we use this tool as a standard operating procedure. Why is the district considering short-term construction notes? Well, construction costs in Cobb County are estimated to increase 4 to 5% each year. By borrowing funds and starting at the beginning of a calendar year, it's estimated that construction projects could be less expensive, resulting in substantial savings for the school district, and then the district can implement projects earlier in the calendar year. So it makes a lot of sense. Some details and the timeline of the short-term notes. The proposed short-term construction note for 2019 is $90 million. The calendar year 2019 $90 million short-term construction note can only be used to pay for SPLOST 5 projects per short-term construction note financial and legal guidelines. All right, so what is the borrowing timeline? At the December 13th, 2018 board work session, we presented the short-term construction note proposal and resolution for the board for approval. This approval allowed administration with the authorization to proceed with bids to the U.S. financial market, which was scheduled for January 17th, 2019, which is today. Step 2, our financial advisor, Public Financial Management, assisted CCSD to market notes to the U.S. financial market. Bids were accepted today as scheduled, and our goal was to get the lowest interest on these notes. Step 3 represents today's board work session, where we have our financial advisor team for Public Financial Management, we call them PFM, as well as our short-term attorney available as we discuss the bidding process with the board and communicate the lowest bid representing the lowest net interest cost to the school district. Step 5 represents the closing of the note sale, where we hope to receive the short-term note proceeds, should the board approve this, at the end of January 2019. These notes must be repaid as a short-term note at the end of the calendar year, December 2019. Now, in order to secure the very lowest borrowing cost and the very lowest interest rate, the district has already engaged the credit rating agency, Moody's Investor Service, to get a short-term debt credit rating. This rating is different from the long-term AAA credit rating that we currently hold, in that their evaluation of the district focuses more on current assets and monthly cash flows. Short-term debt risk is assessed by the credit rating agency in much the same way that the long-term debt issuance is. Moody's Investor Services classifies short-term notes into 4 credit rating grades. They're MIG 1, MIG 2, MIG 3, and MIG 4. MIG 1 is the highest. Based on their independent review of the district's current financial status and the district's financial operation, On December 2018, Moody's Investor Service assigned Cobb County School District the highest possible short-term credit rating, MIG 1, to the Cobb County School District. So that's a very good thing, and it's a good achievement for our county department and finance operation. Additionally, as a result of us engaging Moody's Investor Service for the short-term credit rating, Moody's also reviewed the overall credit standing in December of 2018, and they reaffirmed our current AAA credit rating, which is the highest long-term credit rating possible. As a result of the bidding process today, a bid sheet has been prepared and given to you, which represents the financial institutions that bid on our short-term construction note borrowing, and you have those at each of your desks today. Because of the bidding process, the district is able to borrow short-term funds at a very low interest cost. This low interest cost, coupled with substantial savings on construction costs, estimated to be in the range of 4 to 5%, by borrowing funds at the beginning of the calendar year, provides the district with the opportunity to more than cover the cost of the borrowing in this calculation. And as a result, with the savings of construction costs, the district will have a total savings somewhere in the neighborhood of $900,000 to $1.6 million in savings, depending on the construction cost savings realized. Now, at this time, I want to invite representatives of PFM Financial Advisors, Senior Management Consultant Laura Howe, and Senior Analyst Elise Lomel to the podium just to give a brief summary of the bidding process this morning, the financial institution bidders, and how the winning bid went. Each board member, you do have a summary of that at your desk. So if I can invite them up here, and then I'll finish when you're finished.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us here. As Brad said, my name is Laura Howe. I'm with Public Financial Management. We serve as financial advisor to the district. We did provide this summary for you, and I'll go through it briefly if that's okay. As was stated, the purpose is to provide funding upfront for costs that you're expected to incur to go ahead and start on the construction costs for sales tax receipts that you're expected to incur throughout the year. The pricing went this morning at 10 a.m. We had a competitive sale held through the bidding platform iPrio. We did receive 9 bids. It was a very successful pricing this morning. We listed the banks for you. Last year, just in comparison, there was only 5 bids. So a lot's going on. This is attributed to the strong credit rating of the district, the name getting out of Cobb County, that investors want this paper to have it. On page 2, you'll see the results. Of those bids, Morgan Stanley was the winning bidder, providing the lowest net interest cost of 1.72%. Very tight cover bid coming in from Wells Fargo at 1.725%. And stated at the bottom, this will mature December 18th, 2019, prior to the end of the calendar year in accordance with law. Is there any questions I can address?
Any questions? Okay, no. Oh, yes, Dr. Howard?
The net interest costs, are these set in stone, or is there any variability at all throughout the year?
No, this is a fixed rate through the maturity date in December.
Okay. And are there any other kind of hidden costs within this that we should be aware of that vary from institutions?
No, so what's set in the whole pricing of this is any of the fees of bond counsel or of ours, the underwriter's discount, all of that's included in this pricing. So there's nothing hidden in the expense for you. It's known once we, actually as of today, those figures are known. So once you close at the end of January, everything's set. Nothing will come up later.
Okay. And also, do we have a sense of this working relationship? Finding lowest bid is great, but also, you know, working with the company is important, so do we consider that in our decision-making?
For short-term competitive sales, it's not so much. I mean, obviously, the showing of this shows that these banks care about it. When you're doing a negotiated sale, the relationship's a little bit more because they're bringing you to market leading. This is us, you know, sort of your financial advisor and bond counsel on the front end are doing all the work to put this out there for the banks. Elise had sent an email out the other day notifying all of the banks that this was coming. So in this instance, it's not as much kind of an ongoing relationship that you're working with their desk to bring it the day of. They likely already had investors lined up to take this paper away before they put their bid in this morning.
Last question is just comparing our net interest costs this year versus previous years. I would love to get just a general sense of the interest rates. Thank you.
Sure. So last year, in 2018, you all received a bid of 1.277%. Obviously, short-term interest rates have been rising from the prior year. And we had looked at it this morning. The MIG-1 rating for 11 months as of yesterday was 1.78%. I haven't seen what rates did today yet, but the 1.72 obviously is lower than the 1.78 for 11 months as of yesterday.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. Anybody else? Yes, Mr. Superintendent.
Yeah, let me, great questions, Dr. Howard, and let me tag team on what she just said, because when I first came to the district in '06, it was SOP, or Standard Operating Procedure. We would borrow $100 million every January, and we would make $2 to $3 million on that money because of its being invested throughout the year. As the economy tanked in 2008, that prevented the district from being able to have a positive outcome of borrowing the money up front, because it was just costing us too much money to do that when interest rates tanked with the economy. So now that it's coming back, the key here is that the lowest bid is below the market rate. So obviously, when we get this $90 million, it's going to be invested until it's needing to be utilized. So that being said, there's going to be money made on it. We're not quite to the point of it being a wash just based on the gap between what the market interest rate is and what the lowest bid is. But that in combination with the savings in construction is what makes this a no-brainer at this point in time. Now, if construction was tanked, then we would not be entering into this kind of arrangement, because it just wouldn't make sense. But as the economy is continuing to rebound and construction inflation continues to rise, it makes the most sense, and what the taxpayers of Cobb County should be very interested in is the fiscal responsibility and accountability of the district in trying to reduce the amount of SPLOST dollars being taken for inflationary costs versus being able to take advantage of as much buying power as we can. And while I'm on that point, I want to say publicly to Brad and Financial Services how much difference it makes for having a department and employees within that department and on our team. And I know he will attribute the success of this to his team. But being able to show, number one, our AAA credit rating, and then number two, the MIG-1 rating for short term. Also, and she just mentioned it, we only had 5 bidders last year. So we've almost doubled the amount of bidders. So that is speaking very highly of the financial stability of the district when it comes time to borrow money. And certainly we're in the position of being able to borrow money for positive situation and not in a negative. So I appreciate those questions and also the opportunity to make those points.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right, Ms. Howell, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Mr. Johnson.
So let me finish up with the proposal on the agenda item. As a result of the bidding process, Morgan Stanley and Company LLC had the lowest net interest cost or bid of 1.720755%. So we have a lot of decimals there. But that's a great bid and below the prevailing market rate of 1.78. So this is a good deal for us. As a result of the data, we recommend that the board approve them as the winning bidder and approve the resolution, so forth, that the board approve the note resolution confirming the acceptance of the best bid for the purchase of $90 million in short-term construction notes so we can borrow the short-term funds at the lowest possible interest rate. I'm very proud of our leadership in finance for their teamwork making this happen. The staff director leadership is Jan Hendricks, Mandy Wissing, Tom Marshall, and Lisa Carter-Leach. This is an acknowledgement that financial leadership matters. I want to also publicly acknowledge our financial advisor partnership with PFM. We have a long-standing relationship with them. They're very professional and very knowledgeable. Professional mentorship to us in any kind of financial advice that we need. This financial advisor team consists of Laura Howe and Elise Lomel from PFM Financial Advisors, as well as our attorneys, Terry Finister and Clem Doyle. So we appreciate you guys. Administration requests that the board approve this agenda item. Mr. Chairman, that's my presentation for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any other, Mr. Scamahorn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Johnson, just a curiosity question. On our note, do we wait and write one check at the end of the year, or is there an advantage as SPLOST funds come in that we pay down that?
No, we can't pay it back till the end of the year, so we'll pay it back in December in
Okay.
one check.
Thank you.
Actually, it's a wire.
Okay.
Any other
I
questions?
thought maybe you wrote it out of your own checking account. So
That would be the biggest check I've ever written.
I'm available to chauffeur you if you do. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anything else? All right. Any objection to putting this on consent? Consent. All right, we'll put it on consent. Agenda item number 3, sir.
All right, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm going to ask Mr. John Adams to come and bring the next agenda item, but as he's coming, I want to introduce this item as an example of this has been a very lengthy process to get to this point. The community at Harley Leland's current facility has been very active and participating in this process, and we appreciate that. But what I want to draw attention to is the fact that we did commit to that community that this project, and to the board, that this project would be the first construction project coming out of the gate for SPLOST 5. And we are meeting that commitment today, assuming the board approves this as the first construction project coming out of the gate from SPLOST 5. We're very excited about this, and just look forward to this being a new facility and a new location. So, John?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Superintendent, Mr. Chair, members of the board. It is my pleasure to bring you agenda item number 3, recommendation for approval to award a contract for a combined replacement elementary school for Harley Leland Elementary School and Clay Elementary School. As the superintendent put incredibly well, this is a great news story. We try to bring you good news stories. This is a great news story, especially for the good folks in South Cobb. In accordance with the approved SPLOST 5 program, Harley Leland Elementary School and Clay Elementary School are scheduled to receive a combined replacement elementary school. Award of a contract at this time will allow the project to remain on schedule with a scheduled substantial completion date of May 2020. We had 7 proposals in this case. We're recommending that the award go to Nix Fowler Constructors out of Mableton, Georgia, for the recommended amount of $26.827 million, as you see listed there. This is budgeted in SPLOST 5, and awarding the contract to Nix Fowler and allowing us to authorize the contract will allow us to remain on schedule. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Any questions or comments? All right, Mr. Scamahorn. All right, Ms. Davis.
So excited about this. I do have a question about the contract. Have they built anything else for us?
Yes, yes, ma'am, they have. They did Mableton Elementary School, the South Cobb 9th grade center, and the South Cobb High School Theater. They've done a lot of great work for us.
Mr. Scamahorn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Adams, correct me if I'm wrong, we purchased land for this new school about 2 years ago, or one or 2 years ago?
February of 2016.
Okay, so generally it's about 2 years ago, just short of 2 years. Okay, and I'll save some of my comments for later on this evening because, Mr. Chair, I'd like for this to be a discussion item, if that's possible. But I would like to say during our work session that between our gathering of funds, be the SPLOST, and also the design work and the way the process works, it takes a while. We started this really 6 years ago, and when the community was involved, actively involved. In fact, we had started a special savings account of $5 million a year to go for about at least 4 or 5 years, but that wasn't needed since the SPLOST 5 it's passed. So these things take time, and I think we were as expeditious as possible. And I would point out, just as a matter of comparison, We just completed a theater and gym at North Cobb, and that took, from the time that it first got demonstrated that there was a dire need for that, took about 5 years to get that done. So anyway, job well done to you and your staff, Mr. Parker, and the project managers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Scamahorn. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Scamahorn has requested this be a discussion item. If there's no objection, let's discuss it. We'll vote on it this evening at the business meeting. Next.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm going to ask Mr. Darrell York to come forward and bring the administrative rule modifications. And just for the benefit of the new board members, Darrell, if you will, just kind of, take us through the short version of the process and how this works.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, Mr. Superintendent, members of the board, administration has submitted revisions to 2 administrative rules for review. We normally do that as part of the regular agenda packet. And while no formal action is required, we're always here to answer any questions about those revisions before they're put into place. And Mr. Adams and I are here to answer any questions about these tonight.
Thank you, Mr. York. Any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none.
Question.
Oh, yes, Dr. Howard.
I'm just curious how to explain the revisions to kind of an everyday person, just, when we're making rule changes, or it's just nice to hear it in a different way.
Sure. Yes, sir. In general, when we have rule changes, those may come from administration, they may come from local schools, they may be as a result of legislative changes that come about. This particular change has to do with our Swiss and IE squared waivers approved by our board first and then the state board. But Mr. Adams, I'll defer to you about the specifics on what we're doing here.
Thank you, Mr. York. The very short version for a layman is that as presented to the board last year, we are trying to move the needle in Cobb using the flexibility afforded to us by IE squared Swiss waivers to operate a $1.2 billion organization as we should in this century, while also trying to preserve 99% of the protections of the Fair Dismissal Act. We are going to keep Cobb the best place to teach, lead, and learn, and especially to teach, but also give us the ability to be a little more nimble and perhaps a little less bureaucratic, and to be able to operate the district in an effective manner.
Okay, Dr. Howard. Mr. Scamahorn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to add to what Dr. Howard his statements and questions. I mean, the board's not prevented from making suggestions either, like if our constituents or staff at other schools. So Mr. York may throw a rock at me for saying that, but we can make our suggestions based on what they recommend to us and go from there. Is that
yes, sir.
Correct?
Absolutely. Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And generally speaking, there's 2 forms of this. There's administrative rules and there's policies. So certainly board policies will be brought to the board for discussion and lay on the table until the next meeting, where official action would be taken. Administrative rules are a little bit different and just kind of serves as the standard operating procedures of the district, if you will.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
Okay, and that brings us to approval of the agenda. If there's no objection, our agenda is approved. I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel, student appeal, land, and legal. Okay, everything. All right. Mr. Wheeler made the motion, and I saw Dr. Howard's hand up as the second. So we are in, oh yeah, we need a vote. All those in favor? All right, that's the 5-0. And now we will adjourn to executive session. We'll be back here at 7.